White House says it has secured extra commitments from Israel over the worsening humanitarian crisis in Gaza.
National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan says the U.S. wants Israel to follow through on its commitments as it works on various issues in the region. Now, these include negotiating a hostage exchange and a truce in Gaza, securing a diplomatic resolution in Lebanon, and ensuring Israel's defense against Iran.
Secretary of State Antony Blinken earlier urged Israel to extend pauses in fighting to sustain the flow of aid into the enclave. This amid criticism by humanitarian groups after Washington said it would not stop military supplies to its ally, concluding that Israel had made progress in allowing aid into Gaza.
But hopes of any breakthrough in ceasefire talks remain dim. Israel's Defense Minister Israel Katz vowed the IDF will not stop its attacks on Hamas and Hezbollah until its objective of disarming both groups have been met.
The IDF has been pounding Hezbollah targets in Lebanon, launching fresh strikes on Beirut's southern suburbs. Hezbollah reportedly fired suicide drones targeting the Israeli army's headquarters in Tel Aviv for the first time. Strikes on Gaza also continuing. The IDF targeted what it previously designated as safe zones in the enclave, killing at least 9 people.
For more insights, let's talk to Aaron Miller, Senior Fellow at the Carnegie Endowment for International Peace. He joins us from Washington, D.C. Aaron, great to have you back on the show. I want to ask you, so what happens next? Now that we know that Washington has decided it won't stop all these arms transfers to Israel, and we are, of course, hearing all about these continued attacks in the region.
Look, I think we have to be very sober and realistic here. There are 3 ongoing conflicts, one between Israel and Hamas, one between Israel and Hezbollah, and of course, the main event with strategic consequences for regional and international economy is the Israeli-Iranian relationship, quote unquote. I think it's going to be extremely, of those 3, I think the best chance for a diplomatic off-ramp is in Lebanon, where the administration, this administration, might be able to create one between now and the end of the year. On Gaza, I think I'm very pessimistic. The reality is that Hamas is going to survive as an insurgency. The Israelis will not withdraw from Gaza because there's no security architecture, no boots on the ground, no Arab deterrent force, no international mandate with an international force, and certainly no Palestinian security forces which are credible and powerful enough to assume control and responsibility. So for the hostages, for the long-suffering 2.3 million largely innocent Palestinians in Gaza, I think it's going to be a very, very painful fall, and this conflict is going to go well into next year.
Aaron, help me make sense of this. I can't figure this out. I mean, I hear what you're saying, but there are, as you mentioned, areas where Joe Biden can be tougher. The arms transfer obviously is one thing, but there's the broader question of a job now being done in some areas and, perhaps a ceasefire. Here's how Antony Blinken framed it. Let's have a listen.
From my perspective, what we've seen is this. Israel, by the standards it set itself, has accomplished the goals that it set for itself, the strategic goals it set for itself. It was rightly determined to make sure, to the best of its ability, that October 7th could never happen again. And to do that, it said that it needed to dismantle the military organization of Hamas and to get the leadership that was responsible for October 7th. It's done both of those things. So this should be a time to end the war.
So why won't Biden change course now, at least a little bit, with the U.S. election effectively over and just over 2 months left in his term?
I don't think Joe Biden, even if he were to apply pressure on the Netanyahu government, would stand much of a chance of getting the prime minister to stand down and end the war. And I think just because the Secretary of State, who is a fine and admirable man, has determined that the Israelis have accomplished their goals, that's not the way Netanyahu sees it. He's on trial for bribery, fraud, and breach of trust in a Jerusalem district court before 3 judges, 4 years running now. He's due to testify in December at his trial, and he's tried to get that delayed for 2.5 months, but the judges have disagreed. So for Netanyahu, controlled escalation and not ending the war in Gaza is much preferable to a diplomatic solution, because if he agrees to one, then he needs to involve the Palestinian Authority. He needs to trade large numbers of Palestinian prisoners who have either been charged or convicted of killing Israelis in order to redeem the estimated 51 hostages out of 101 that Hamas is now holding and abusing, I might add, that remain alive. And in order to get Arab participation, a security force, or the billions of dollars that is going to be required to rebuild Gaza, he's going to have to agree to some political horizon, like a Palestinian state. And he's not prepared to do this. This has been evident over the course of the last year. And even if Biden were prepared to apply pressure, in 70 days, Donald Trump is going to take the inaugural oath, and he's going to reverse everything that Biden did. So I think the administration is in a real bind.
Indeed. I mean, so how optimistic are you that under the second term Trump presidency, we can see any meaningful progress or change? Or do you foresee more increased challenges and instability in the region?
Look, the Middle East is not a priority for Donald Trump. China's a priority. Trying to do something about ending the war in Ukraine and rearranging major areas of American governance at home. These are the priorities. Mass deportation of immigrants, vacating all the charges against him by appointing an attorney general, announcing it tonight, who's literally going to become an appendage of the White House. Separating hundreds, if not thousands, of government employees from their jobs in an effort to purge what Donald Trump believes is the deep state. These are his priorities. If he has a priority in the Middle East, I think there are two. Number one, avoid a major war, particularly between Israel and Iran, that could end up with an escalation that leads to a multi-front war, and a return to what the Iranians did in September 2019 when they attacked and took 5% of world production offline by attacking Abqaiq and Khurais, oil-producing facilities in Saudi Arabia. That's one priority. And the second priority is trying to win the Nobel Peace Prize by trying to figure out a way to construct a process of normalization between Israel and Saudi Arabia. We have to understand something about the future, once and future president. He has no real conception of the national interest. His policies are transactional, they're opportunistic, they're ad hoc, and they're tethered, frankly, to his personal whims and fancies, to his financial interests, to his politics, and to his vanity. So you're dealing with a very transactional person. And if you were Xi Jinping now, sitting back wondering how Donald Trump is going to respond, on one hand, you'd be delighted because Trump is going to end up alienating much of the global South and probably a good many of America's European allies. But on the other hand, he's appointed a number of individuals in his administration who are ideologues on the issue of China. And tariffs, I think, are going to become a major source of leverage, or frankly, an effort to weaken an already burdened and constrained Chinese economy. So those are the priorities, I think, for Donald Trump, not the Middle East.
Even so, Aaron, I mean, things are going to be happening in the Middle East, even as Trump hopes, nothing transpires there. But there are questions, for example, about the West Bank. And we know that in his first term, Donald Trump, that is, supported many of Israel's territorial claims. There are now questions about whether or not annexation is on the table, given the recent appointments like Mike Huckabee. And also there's Yakir Lita and, of course, Elise Stefanik as well. I mean, what are your thoughts on this?
Look, annexation has been pursued now for 2 years by the most right-wing government in Israel's history. It's the project of two ministers in that government, Bezalel Smotrich and Itamar Ben-Gvir. And frankly, they have already laid the foundation for the annexation of the 60% of the West Bank that the Israelis control. It's annexation, or it will be annexation in everything but name. I don't think Donald Trump wants a formal declaration of annexation because, back to the Saudis for a minute, part of getting Israeli-Saudi normalization is going to be to try to get Mr. Netanyahu to create some sort of pathway, some sort of political horizon to a Palestinian state, and to try to determine whether Mohammed bin Salman, aka the putative one-day Saudi king, now crown prince, whether or not he would accept that. So I don't think we're talking, certainly not in the first year of a Trump administration, not talking about formal annexation, but in many respects, the policies that have been pursued by this Israeli government have already created what I would argue to you is a de facto status of a West Bank that is bound to Israel like a barnacle to the side of a boat.
All right, Aaron, we do have to leave it there for now. We appreciate your time and your thoughts as well. Aaron Miller is Senior Fellow at the Carnegie Endowment for International Peace.